Do that. All righty, Jimmy. Good morning to me and good afternoon to you, my friend. Just want to say welcome to the podcast. I thank you so much for hopping on with me. I'm so appreciative. And yeah, I'll start there. How are things?
Very good. Yeah, thanks for having me. Sun's out today, so it's lovely to be here and to be chatting.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So in terms of your point on the weather, what's the weather out there in Brighton where you're located?
Well, it's been horrible for quite a long period of time, storms and all the rest of it. And suddenly today the sun's come out. So yeah, everybody's in a great mood walking down the street.
I love it. I love it. I actually had last year, or sorry, in 2020, I had a plan with my buddies to do my stag party out in London, and we were going to go see a Chelsea game, my favorite team, and we were going to make our way around London, but that had to get canceled because of COVID. So I'm really, really looking forward to coming out there, and hey, who knows, when I get out there, we might be able to meet up and have some coffee or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let me know if you're in this neck of the woods.
Yeah, would love to. So, I think, I just want to be cognizant of your time, and I know you're a busy guy. So I thought maybe we can jump right in. And, before we go too deep, maybe you can give me just a high level, maybe like an elevator pitch on what you do so that listeners can kind of understand what we're here to do today.
Okay, well, I'm a meditation teacher based in the UK, and most of where I put my content is Instagram. So I run an Instagram account and I talk pretty broadly about lots of different types of meditation and the effects different types of meditation can have, or just anything that comes to my mind, really. Or sometimes I share different insights from various different teachers or science insights or techniques, anything really that I feel like that's all related to meditation. And then as on side next to that, I also teach a very specific kind of meditation,
Mhm.
which I run a course every month. And so people tend to find me through Instagram and then they do my course. And that's mostly what I'm doing, really. I'm just sharing content and then teaching a very specific kind of meditation. Yeah.
Very, very good. And thank you for sharing that. It's great at a high level. Now, if you can maybe just take me through like how this journey started. And one thing I'll say is I'll offer up, something from my end. So maybe we can like kind of guide ourselves along the way. So, about I'll say 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was in a position where I didn't have direction or clarity, right? I was even whatever platform in my life, whether it was exercise, whether it was reading, hanging out with friends, I felt like I wasn't intentional about it. I may have taken those things for granted. And then, once I just kind of struck out on my own, I just, left my house one day and I started living life intentionally, right? Doing things, connecting with people intentionally, learning from them intentionally, making the most out of my relationships, working out with intention, reading with intention. So now I feel like what really keeps me driven in life is finding other people who are focused and attentive and very intentional with their actions. So I'll offer that up as kind of like the start to my journey, and I'm still very early on. So maybe that gives you a little bit of a bearing on how you've started your journey and the sharing you're about to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I like that. Well, my journey, I guess you could say, started back in the early 2000s when I was in my early 20s. I'm almost 42 now, so
You
talking
do
like
not
20
look
years ago.
42, man.
This is it. So I was big into the clubbing and partying scene back then. I was
Nice.
into the DJing side of it, all the music, and we used to go to Ibiza with my friends and travel around the world going to parties. My whole life is really about the party scene. And as some of your listeners might know, if you hang around that scene for too long and you burn the candle both ends for too long, you'll run into some mental health problems. And this is what started to happen to me around the end of my 20s, going towards my 30s. I started to suffer from pretty chronic insomnia, bouts
Wow.
of depression, and it occurred to me, in order to solve these problems, that I should just start Googling solutions. I never thought to go reach out to a professional or anything like that, or to even really ask a doctor. I just started Googling clinically proven ways to fix insomnia or scientifically proven ways to fix insomnia, that sort of thing. Because I was never really into spirituality. I was brought up Catholic and I rejected that quite early on. And I really had bought into the idea that science knows best. So what
Sure.
can I find that will help me? And I kept coming across these articles that said meditation is a scientifically proven way to deal with insomnia, to deal with depression. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I like the sound of that. I can imagine having a peaceful mind would be very beneficial for me, because my life wasn't in a great place. I was drinking far too much, and I used to drink every night pretty much to get myself to sleep. I used to drink heavily at the weekends. It wasn't that my life was a mess, because I still had a business that I ran and I still, got myself together, but I was definitely something not quite right there. And so that's when I started to try things out with meditation. I started out with sleep CDs, which I ordered, I
Okay.
think, off eBay back in the day. And they were kind of meditation for sleep. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And that led me to go, okay, well, what's this mindfulness about? And I tried a few things. Nothing really seemed to work. So I thought, okay, let's get serious. So I booked myself onto a mindfulness course
Okay.
called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. And it's an 8-week long course, classroom based. And you go there every week and you learn more things about how the mind works, how to deal with stress and all the rest of it. And that was really, really good. It really opened my eyes to the fact that there's a way of working with the mind which is much more general. You don't have to listen to something specifically about sleep. You can try and understand your mind and find peace with what's there. And that was useful. It was really good. But once that course was over, I found that it just didn't stick. I didn't find that I wanted to meditate every day. I had to kind of like force myself. It just wasn't really, although the benefits were there sometimes, it just didn't stick, like a lot of things don't. And the drinking came back into my life and the insomnia came back. And so I thought, okay, well, I've bought into this meditation thing, but I'm not quite getting it yet. So what else is out there? So I went looking for something else. And I came across this lady who lived around the corner from me, back where I used to live in Notting Hill, teaching a different kind of meditation, which she called Vedic meditation.
Okay.
And it was a 4-day course. You just went along to this little place, and over 4 days, they teach you how to do it. And that's pretty much it. So I went along open-minded. It did say on the website that it was scientific. So I thought, okay, good. I don't want any of this weird cult or, anything
Sure,
like
sure.
that.
Yeah.
And I was really like funny about that at the time. I didn't
Yeah.
want to get drawn into anything weird. Anyway, sure enough, I go to this place and there was a picture of an Indian guru on the wall, and she was burning incense and singing in Sanskrit, and there was fruit and flowers. And of course, to my sensibilities at the time, I just thought, oh, what am I doing here? This is not the kind of thing that I understand. This seems so alien, I'm probably being ripped off here. But sure enough, after that bit at the very beginning, we got down to the teaching, and she was very down to earth and she explained it in a perfect way. She gave me this mantra and showed me how to use it. And slowly but surely, as I used it, I started to feel an altered state of consciousness. Things calmed down. And after 4 days, it just worked. What I was looking for was what I got. I got this quiet mind, this feeling of a very rested body. I went to sleep and I just slept like a baby.
Wow.
And I've never had an insomnia problem since. That was pretty much solved over those 4 days. And then I just continued to do it over and over and over again. And my life just got better and better and better. And then I got more interested in, okay, what is this? Where did this come from? Why is it working so well? And even the cultural aspects, the bits that I found so alien and off-putting at the beginning, I now understand that within a framework of the culture from where the meditation comes from. I know who that Indian guru was, and I know why he did, and all of the rest of it. And that all makes sense to me now. And it's like, oh, okay. It was just because I'm from a different culture that I was a little bit put off, but now it all makes sense. And so that kind of gives you a flavor of what my journey was about, of how I discovered the kind of meditation that I teach. Yeah.
That is amazing. Wow, such a great story, man. I'm so happy for you that you're able to find this peace, because, I think people go their whole lives without finding it, or they save it for retirement, right? And
Mm.
one of the tough things, and I see you, continuing to work on it, but you kind of have found the groove is, when you think of meditation, in a traditional sense. I think of some guy in a forest, living the ascetic life, sitting on a tree trunk and just, lotus pose, calm, right? But that's not what we all can do, right? We all can't just live isolated. We have to find a way to mesh into normal society, into your everyday, while at the same time maintaining your peace, maintaining your calm, and things of that sort. But if we go to the earlier part, where we talk about the party scene, right? And myself included, right? I'm 30 years old. I'll be 31 this year. And primarily in my 20s, that's what I did, right? Up until a few years ago, just where's the party at? Can't sit still. If I had moments to myself, I had to fill it with something, right? Couldn't sit with the silence. And so ultimately what I would find, and what it took was this happy hour I was at a coworker, right? And he was like 55, partner at a big firm. And I was just waiting for a buddy to pick me up. And he asked me if I could, drink some more with him. And I said, sure, I will. And then we went to another bar. And before I knew it, I was trash. And I was like, hey man, don't you have to go home to your family? He's like, and he said something like, I just, whatever I can do to stay out. Right. And I said, wow, this is a little melancholic. That was kind of like a click for me that this is going to be me in a little bit if I don't fix myself. Right. So as we dive into that a little bit more, what were some of the experiences, right? Like if you remember any that clicked for you and said, hey, I need to like dive into something deeper and find some more meaning. Does that make sense? The question I'm asking here?
100% understand. And I can give you something that I think will explain what shifted me as well. So
Yeah.
while all that was going on, that story I told you earlier with the insomnia and all the rest of it, of course, outside of that happening, I had a whole quite a rich life going on.
Sure.
And believe it or not, around that time, I had started a business online that I was running from my laptop, nothing to do with meditation. And I'd convinced myself at some point in my 20s, I think I started thinking about 2005, that I'd be happy if I could run a business from my laptop. I didn't want to work for the travel company I was working for anymore. And it was long before this was kind of a trendy, normal thing to do. I just really thought, I bet you can run a business from a laptop, and I'm going to figure that out. I'm going to just make it work somehow. So I did dive into that world, and I discovered affiliate marketing and SEO and pay-per-click and all those things. Everybody knows what they are now. I was quite early on with all of that. And me and a friend, we just dived in. We quit our jobs. We were absolutely broke and penniless for like a couple of years. But sure enough, we'd actually made something happen. We created a business. We found another business partner who was a trader. We brought him on and built this business around a trading website, basically like a trading room, online trading room. And after a few years, it was doing pretty well. I was making like quite good money, wasn't having to work very hard. And I thought, oh, we're really getting there. So the missing piece of the puzzle for me was, now I need to go and live in somewhere exotic. That will be it. That was my original idea, because I was always into traveling and partying. And so I was convinced that if I could get my life to look this perfect way, then I'd be suddenly happy and everything would be great. So I chose Tulum, Mexico.
Okay.
Me and my old business partner went out there, and we hired this cool place with a swimming pool outside. And it was in, quite near town, and one of the most beautiful beaches in the world. And it was pretty cool. It was fun. There was loads of great parties and stuff there. But what I realized when I was there was, I've got the thing that I wanted. This is what I dreamt about 5 years ago. I've made it happen. And now I'm here, and I'm basically just thinking about carrying on the same lifestyle. I just want to go drinking. I can't sleep still. I've brought these meditation sleep CDs with me.
Yeah.
I just took myself with me and realized that no amount of changing things on the outside was really going to fix anything. So when I went out to Mexico, I just thought, well, I don't know when I'll come back. I'll come back when I'll feel, I'll probably fall in love with somebody and I'll live happily ever after out there. I realized very quickly that Mexico was not the answer to my dreams. And some inner work had to be done. And I'd never really considered that up to that point. But that's when I was out there that I decided, okay, when I get back to the UK, that's when I'll book onto this mindfulness course. So that's when that first sort of triggered that. I knew something big had to happen. And so, yeah, it was on the flight back from that I felt like I'm moving into a new phase of life now, because for so long, all I've been pushing for was make this money, make this business successful, get to this exotic location, live this life that everybody thinks they want. And on the plane back, I was like, okay, that didn't work out how I thought it would. What's next? And I'm guess I'm lucky enough to be one of those people who actually achieved their dream and then found out that it wasn't what they wanted after all. So yeah, once I'd had that and I came back, I realized, oh, okay, inner peace is more important than your outer lifestyle.
Completely agree, and that is all gold right there, my friend. And I appreciate you sharing that. And a lot of what I sum up with what you're saying is, your problems will follow you if you don't address them and be intentional about addressing them, right? And one thing I'd be hoping to interested to hear about a little bit more is what you have the inside transformation and the outside transformation, right? So I guess the first tier of that question was, okay, did they happen simultaneously? Was it a combined effort? And also from an outside perspective, let's say we start there, right? And what I'll say about that is, I was always a guy who worked out. I implemented that in my life as a principle, played sports growing up, worked out in college and everything. But I was, again, never intentional about it. And once I kind of got this wave of enlightenment and the knack to move that forward, I started diving into it a little bit deeper, right? I started saying, hey, look, processed foods, stay away, right? Cook everything you eat, make sure it's like cooked, right? And then drink a lot of water, sleep more, those types of things. And then what I noticed was, even though I was never, overweight, I like leaned up, and my body followed suit. So if we start there on the outside, what did you have a physical transformation that happened from the time, like you were saying, back in the party stages to now? Like, how has your physical presence changed, do you think?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. So it's a little bit complicated because back in my 20s, I was much more interested in the physical. So I
Okay.
went to the gym a lot more, and I probably was even much better with my diet and trying to make my body look a certain way. Um, I think maybe, but this is also maybe because I'm a bit older, I'm not as interested in it now. Now I just kind of want to be fit and I want to feel healthy.
Right.
Um, but I don't obsess over it in any way. So I don't ever, force myself, oh, I can't eat this thing because I want to have abs when I'm in Ibiza
Sure.
next week.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really think like that anymore. But I think part of that is to do with age as well. Um, so yeah, it's funny, but recently I have been thinking to myself, I've noticed that I have let my fitness go a little bit recently, and I know what it feels like to be in good shape and to feel good about your body. And so just today, strangely enough, I um picked up I picked up again on going and doing some exercise and wrote down a routine of what I'm going to stick to and everything. So yeah, it's interesting
Nice.
that you've asked that today, because it's easy to get so focused on a few things, one thing or a few things, that you let other things slide. And for the last couple of years, my focus has been so much on either meditation for my own personal growth or meditation for the people that I teach, that I've definitely even now let other things slide. And so I have to pick those back up. And I think that's life. It's just constantly a balancing act.
Yes, yes. And that's the key phrase, right? Balance. And, what I'll say is I wouldn't take anything away from yourself, man. You look like you're in shape and you look like a fit guy, right? But what kind of the purpose behind what I was saying there was like just like, let's say you go to Instagram and you follow a fitness page, right? You're probably going to see someone who is really, really big, really jacked up and things like that. And there's things to take from that page, right? But at the same time, that person might be their only thing, right? They might be the fitness guy or the fitness girl. And for me, fitness is just one component, right? So, and then when you think about, like, if we dive into that fitness a little bit more, you think about someone who's huge, they're consuming like such great amounts of things, right? And to me, that almost feels unnatural to consume like 3,000 calories a day, right? And then so what I come back to is in that house of fitness, am I, is it fitting in with the reading side of me? Is it fitting in with the enlightenment side of me? Because the more you lean on fitness, you tip that balance, right? And so, or in any, whether it's reading, whether it's traveling, whether it's photography, if you lean too far in one way, you tip the balance. So to what the coming back full circle on that question, I was just wondering a little bit more on, hey, has, and it seems like it has, fitness has changed a little bit in your mind as you've gotten older, right? And you've gone on your journey. And it seems like it's one piece that propels you, you know, with your meditation grind, with connecting with other people. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah. It's always been something that I've dipped in and out of, but
Yeah,
I've always been one of those people who had to force myself to work out. I was never one of those people who just like woke up in the morning and, oh, I had to do it.
sure.
It's so we're all a bit different in that sense. But I know how it feels to be in great shape. And even now, it's not like I've really let myself go. I
Right.
just mean I've let myself go compared to what I was like
I
2 years ago before the
gotcha.
virus kicked in and messed everything up a little bit.
Yep.
But it's all good. I mean, these are all just pieces of the jigsaw. And sometimes it is okay, I think, to just say, okay, right, I'm going to immerse myself in this one thing and I don't have time for these other things. And it's okay to do that for a certain period of time. For example, a while back, maybe I can't remember, was it a couple of years ago, I went and did a meditation course, which was a 10-day silent retreat. And it was
Wow.
just 12 hours of meditation all day. That's all you did. It was completely silent. You didn't even make eye contact with anybody else. You're in your own bubble for 12 days. And there was no fitness. There was no nothing. You couldn't even take a book or a journal. There was just nothing but you and your mind. And you were totally immersed and you let everything go. I could not live like that.
Oh my
But for
God.
10 days, I immersed myself in that. And then I came out the other side and was like, wow, okay, I learned a lot about myself, about my mind, about suffering, about lots and lots of different things. But as soon as I came out of it, it was like, okay, now I need to come back into balance, get the other parts of my life a bit more normalized. And then I can integrate what I discovered while I fully immersed myself and let everything else go. I should probably point out as well that while those experiences are fascinating and useful, I don't think it's as important as just fitting in a daily meditation routine into your normal life. That brought the most transformation for me. But yeah, these other experiments have also been fun, interesting, and useful. Yeah.
That is so cool that you did that, man. 10 days, huh? And then so you said it was 12 hours a day, and then could you talk after that 12 hours, or was it just 10 days of silence?
10 days of complete silence.
My
You're living like a
goodness.
monk. So I was in a room with 7 other people. We were all in bunk beds, but we
Mhm.
can't communicate in any way and we can't even make eye contact. And at
Okay.
4:30 in the morning, there'll be a gong outside the window, wakes everybody up, and you all get up and you all go over to a big meditation hall and you all sit on your cushion with no back support, with the legs crossed. And you just meditate. The first 3 days is nothing but focusing on the air coming in and out of the nostrils. And then on day 4, they teach you a body scanning technique known as Vipassana. And you do that for the rest of it, pretty much between 10 and 12 hours a day. So it's
Wow.
very intense. Yeah.
I am astounded, my friend. How uncomfortable were you when you first started that?
The physical discomfort was the worst part of it because
Yeah.
I was already had been meditating quite a long time. So sitting there with my own mind, no problem at all. And although this is a different technique, that wasn't really an issue for me. But I'm used to sitting comfortably when I meditate with my back supported. And that's how I teach all my students. I say, the most important thing is being comfortable because you've only got 20 minutes. So
Right.
we need you to be comfortable so that you can get into that place of deep relaxation. Whereas this isn't really about that. This is sit in the proper way, be completely dead still, and any pain or suffering that does arise, you work with it skillfully. It's a completely different thing. And yeah, for me, the physical discomfort of the pain in the knees and the pain in the back was considerable, but it was also some of the most transformative element of it, because I realized as the pain was arising that I was creating a second layer of suffering out of it. So there was the actual physical sensation that was occurring, and then my mind was making a story about that too. You know,
Mm-hmm.
how long is this going to go on for? Wish I hadn't signed up for this. Maybe I'm going to damage my knees. All the stories that the mind spins over and over and over again. How
Mm-hmm.
long is it left? Should I open my eyes? All over and over again. And as you start to see how the mind is constantly creating drama in your life, you can
Yes.
pull back a bit from it and you can start to just sit with it and go, okay, I'm just going to let this all rage on. And I'm just going to sit here, and slowly but surely you start to find peace, or, well, what they call equanimity in the
Okay.
meditation world, which is allowing it all to go on and just to find a calmness within that is kind of unshakable, that's deeper than what's going on the outside. And a strong sitting like that will help you find equanimity very quickly. I
Dude.
teach my students a more softly approach, but you can get there through other ways.
Wow, wow. You are blowing my mind here, man. That is so, so interesting. And, to your point, so I actually tried what like your technique, right? So I on my balcony here, got a blanket, got a chair, try to cross my legs for 10 minutes. And to your point, I kept finding that like my mind was saying that like my shoulder's itching, or like oh like you're like you got to scratch your foot, or so, you know what I mean, like it kept. And then when I would do it and open my eyes, obviously I would like have to start over, but I'll be like, my shoulder's actually not itching, like my foot's not like hurting me or anything right now. It's just like my body is like uncomfortable, giving me a sign, giving me an impulse to move and not sit still. Is that like kind of the same thing you were experiencing?
Well, yeah, there are different ways of working with it. So, I mean, if
Yeah.
you wanted to do it in that way that I described on the retreat, then you wouldn't itch. You just wouldn't give in to that sensation. You would put your attention on the itch and watch it and see what happens with the itch, and also see what happens with your reaction to not reacting to the itch. And you
Oh.
will have some pretty deep insights about the way the mind responds generally in life. But when I teach meditation to people at home, most of them aren't looking to have these big insights, and they don't have the time to spend either to do that.
Oh, okay.
So, what I'm teaching people really is the fastest and quickest way towards deep relaxation and stress release, so that they can kind of recharge themselves and then move back out into their lives and be
Yes.
effective at whatever they do. And so normally I say to people, if you're meditating and you have an itch, you're completely free to itch it, do that, and then come back to the meditation. And over time, what you find is that these little disruptions, they bother you less, they tend to calm down, and stillness will eventually find you if you just give it enough time for that to happen. You don't have to force it. You can, but it's just another way of working with it.
That's so true. And like the last part of what you said is like you can't force that stillness upon you. It's going to come to you over time, and it's going to do those type of things to you. And that's my issue with it right now is like I'm trying to force my mind into stillness instead of being patient with it, and I think, when I talk to you and to other people who I believe are calmer in life than I am, I learn those types of things, just to be patient. And so far, in life, I think things have come together as you just put forth, manifest good energy, and do the right things, take the right steps towards them. So that's really good for me to hear, man. And like, this is kind of like more of a, how do I put it, a cliche question, right? um at what point in your life or in this journey did you consider yourself happy?
Good question. Well, I've got an interesting way of thinking about happiness, which I can share with you if you
That'd
like.
be yep.
So yeah, I've been thinking about this over the last few months, and I recognized at some point that there are three levels to happiness. The first level, I would call it surface level happiness.
Okay.
And this is the kind of happiness that arises from the things that we normally go after in life to make us happy. So that could be, you know, getting a new job or a new partner or buying a new car, new clothes, going to your favorite restaurant. These are all legitimate ways of cheering yourself up or making yourself happy. But the problem with things that are considered surface level happiness is that they tend to be very fleeting. They don't last. So, you know, the promotion may be great today and you'll celebrate, but a month from now, you're bored of that and you're thinking about the next one. It's a quite a unstable form of happiness, I suppose, anything on the surface level. But it's still legitimate. We shouldn't turn away from it. We're still free to enjoy those things. But then if we go a bit deeper, we could say, okay, there's other types of happiness. We could call that deeper happiness. And that arises from things like, for example, the cultivation of ethics or relationships that go beyond the romance stage and into, you know, having a much deeper connection.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Peterson, popular guy at the moment, he
Yep.
quite often says this phrase, don't chase happiness, chase meaning. And I think this is what he's talking about. He's saying that if you chase or if you go after responsibility and meaning and ethics, you'll experience a deeper level of happiness, which is more stable than the surface level happiness. So he's, funnily enough, you know, it sounds like a good quote what he says, but he's really just suggesting that you'll be more happy if you get your happiness from this other source.
Right.
Now, exactly, which is makes sense. Now, what he doesn't talk about, or anybody else really, in that self-help world, what they don't talk about is, I say there's another kind of happiness, which I call pure happiness. And this would be the kind of happiness that arises in meditation, maybe in some other situations, but definitely in meditation, which is a kind of happiness that is attached to nothing. It has no goal. It has no physical component in the outside world. It's just a spontaneous happiness, or a lot of people might use the word bliss, which really seems to be interwoven into the fabric of your own being. And you're not really creating it. You're just settling down enough to recognize your own true innate nature, which seems to have a blissful quality to it. And so there's a happiness that's there, which can never be taken from you. It's not dependent on outside forces, although you'll have a hard time accessing it if you're homeless and hungry and those kinds of things.
Yep.
But if you take care of if you've got your basic needs met and you have some time to relax and deal with your stress, you are able to dip into a kind of inherent awake happiness or bliss, whatever you want to call it, a fulfillment that's there, that's not dependent on other things. And that discovery to me was very, very powerful.
Wow. 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 And that is your happiness model, correct?
And so that's how I think of it. Yeah. So
Yes.
I recognize that happiness is always available because it's interwoven into who you are. And the times when you're not happy is simply because you're under too much stress or worry, or the challenges of life have become too much that they've hidden that happiness away, in the same way that the clouds hide away the sun. It's not that the sun disappeared, it was just hidden away.
Wow. Wow. Such a great analogy there. And I love this tiered approach, right? That you're mentioning here, because with enlightenment, with fulfillment, to the earlier part of your statement with the surface level happiness, right? When we're young, we're in college, our goal is to get a job and maybe say, hey, look, once I get to that $100,000 salary, happiness will be there for me. That I'll be at the gates and, everything will be awesome going forward. But you realize, like, once you get there, right? Like you with your online business and how things were going forward with you, me with my career, you realize, it's not all it was made out to be, right? It's not that happiness was that job title, happiness was that salary mark. Now that I have, my basic necessities met and I can come up every month and, I'm not worried about food and my basic animalistic needs, happiness is on me now to find it, right? And it's easy to go down a negative path, right, into toxicity and talking smack about people and caught up in social media and financial freedom and the side hustle, right? But you know what I mean? But like now it's like that could be something I dive into, but am I happy before I do that, right? Because if my happiness is not there, I'm going to channel it into that, and that thing's going to be another vice for me and things of that sort. Until, like you're saying, you make positivity and happiness and tranquility a staple of your personality, no matter what the scenario comes in, right? So I don't know. Am I capturing what that is accordingly into some regard?
Yeah, I think you've got it right. The only thing I would say is that it's a slight switch. It's not so much that you have to create it, but what meditation does is it helps you recognize it as an innate quality that's always there and always accessible. So you don't even really have to work on it. But what you have to work on is getting those things out of the way that obscure it. Yeah.
So
And also the other thing you said that is interesting there is about how, you know, we can get so wrapped up in these other ways of chasing happiness. Well, psychologists have a word for that, actually. You might have heard it before, which is hedonic adaptation, where no matter what you get, no matter how good it is, how much money you earn, or how cool the car is, or how great the body is, after a very short period of time, you will just adjust, and it will then become the new normal, and you will no longer get the happiness. And the piece of research that I saw on this, which was absolutely fascinating, was they spoke to lottery winners and people who had been rendered paraplegic by a terrible car accident. And they looked at, lottery winners versus these car accident survivors, and looked at their levels of happiness. And of course, what they found was the lottery people, they had a huge spike in happiness, and then it would slowly tail off.
Yes.
And the people who had the accident had a huge drop in their happiness, and it would slowly taper off. And what they found is, even in these most extreme cases, the spikes in two different directions are so huge that after about 3 years, people would return to their baseline level of happiness. However happy they were before the event is where they went back to. And that's the same pretty much for every other person, even though we're just having much smaller spikes. Most of us don't win the lottery or have the accident, but we're constantly moving back to our baseline. And what meditation can do is help us move that baseline so that we are, of course, still having the spikes up and down in life, but our baseline level of happiness is being moved in a positive direction, slowly but surely over time.
That is amazing. No, so awesome. I can really resonate with all of that. And it kind of goes along the lines of like the law of diminishing returns as well. Like once you get past that, like I said, that poverty level, every like incremental increase in salary brings you less and less happiness, and I don't think people ingest that, kind of topic well enough, because, like I said, it's like, okay, once I become a manager, I'm going to be happy. Once I become a senior manager, oh, I'm going to be happy. Oh, now I'm a senior manager. Once I get the director level, it's going to be good. Right. And it's like, at what point do you stop? And then a lot of that comes with, the whole keeping up with the Joneses methodology. It's like when you go from one level of income to another, you're going to maybe be around another set of people. And then those people are going to have X cars, they're going to have X house, and you're going to feel a little bit left out if you're not living that type of life, maybe, right? And then what happens is you just keep the same level of poor until, the whole way up. So that's I think it's interesting that we resonate on the same platform there. But one quick side question before we go into some other things is, you seem to help a lot of people out with your content, myself included. Has anyone ever come to you and say, hey, Jimmy, before I met you, I was unhappy. And after I met you, I became happy, or something along those lines? Does that happen to you often? Because now that I'm talking to you more, I'm like, that would be so rewarding if I could do that to one person.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I don't think of myself as doing it, really. I think of the fact that I stumbled across this very powerful secret, which is a very specific meditation technique that I learned. It changed my life. And so all I'm trying to do now is go around and give that secret to as many people as possible. And I like to remind myself often that I'm no big deal in the process. I'm just, the average guy who has quite a good way of explaining it so that people get it, and so it sticks. And so I often do get a lot of great feedback from people who say, I'm coming up to my 3rd month since doing your course, and I really am noticing big changes now. I feel so much better in my life. I'm so unbothered by all the problems that used to stress me out, and my relationships are better and my health is better. But whenever I read that, I think, oh, I'm so happy for you. But really, I think that comes from the meditation practice, that really comes from India, that comes down a long line of people who've passed that on. And I'm just one in a huge long line of people who are passing this information along,
Yes.
So yeah, it's very fulfilling for me on the one hand, but at the same time, I don't take much credit for it.
No, I hear you. It's so interesting because, I think in one of the Joe Rogan podcasts I listened to with one of his guests, he said something along the lines of, if you have something really great, like it shouldn't have like a price on it, right? If there's something that's truly foundational, truly inspirational and life-changing, it'll come free. And what'll happen is what's exactly happening to you is people will respond to it, and you'll just know that, hey, this was beyond me. I was just a vehicle for like spreading this out into the world and making sure more people had a similar story like you do. And right now, what I'll say is it's working, because from the things you post on a day-to-day, if I see you posting a story about you just sitting outside, that's a quick reminder for me to get up, get away from the screen, and maybe just not even meditate, but go look outside and just accept silence for a little bit. So, in that way, I feel like you do have such a great influence on people. And I would never downplay it from your perspective, because it's very, very empowering. But I know we spent a lot of time so far on the positive aspects of it, right? Of meditation and this journey of yours. Now, as we dive into the other side of it, tell me a little bit about the folks around you, like your family, maybe your significant others, your friends. How are they taking this journey of yours?
Oh, at first, I
Yeah,
found that there was some resistance with my friends and things, because they would make jokes about it.
sure.
Like, oh, are you going to end up in robes with beads saying
Okay.
"om" and, that kind of thing. But quite quickly, what I found was they all got quite interested when I started saying, hey, I'm not drinking anymore, not because I'm making some big change. I just don't really fancy it that much. I can have a glass of wine, but I don't have this craving to like finish the whole bottle straight away, because my mind and body feels quite good as it is. So, the need to change it isn't really there anymore. And similarly, lots of other things started to just come up naturally in conversation. And so I found that my friends were all like, they'd make some jokes about the meditation at the beginning of the conversation, but then say, but seriously, Jimmy, tell me more about this. Like, can I do it? Can anyone do it? So people will start to listen once they see the changes in you. And my family are very open-minded, so
Good.
I didn't really have too much resistance, because I never really got involved in any kind of movement. I didn't start wearing different clothes, and I didn't start talking in any strange
Mm.
um, new lingo. I just explained it like, oh, this is what I've done, and this is how I feel, and this is how it's getting better and better. And it all happened quite slowly and quite organically. The only time I would say I had any kind of resistance was when I started the Instagram account, because that was where I knew my friends who I'd known for a long time, who didn't know anything about my meditation journey. I knew they'd kind of stumble across it, and they'd see a different side to me than what they used to. A lot of my old friends know me as the partying, drinking, DJing guy. And then suddenly, what's this, Eckhart Tolle quotes being shared or something. I knew they'd find that strange, and something inside me cringed a little bit at that. But I just knew that I was going to have to put it out there, let them discover it in their own time, and let the chips fall where they may. So it's only really your conditioning that makes you have those reactions. You're worried about how other people might see you, but you
Yeah.
can just move through that quite easily. If you meditate quite a lot, you'll find that these thoughts, feelings, and emotions don't tend to stick in the same way they used to.
Yes, yes. And that's so valuable, man. And because I think it's okay to acknowledge those feelings, like you said, right? Like when those feelings come upon you, it's, you don't need to ignore them. You need to triage them and find the root cause of them and things of that sort. And you'll probably come back to yourself, because like I'll do the same thing. Sometimes I'll sit in bed when I have too much time on my hands. I'll be like, dude, this whole podcasting is kind of cringy, right? Like it's kind of like, it's kind of weird that you're doing that. And like what are people saying? And then I'll try to stand up and say, no, like you're doing this for the right purposes. You're trying to shed light into the world and continue to do it. But sometimes, because I'm so focused, I think I'm the only one experiencing those things. And then it's nice for me to hear that someone, with such a following as yourself also goes through those types of, peaks and troughs, and you have your own process for dealing with those melancholic vibes and things of that sort. And you continue to let your light shine. So I find that very, very reassuring. And then, so going back into the primary question here. So you had some maybe initial resistance from your friends. They got along with it. But in terms of the practice of meditation and stuff, and maybe even combined with your social media journey through it, what are some of the tougher points, or maybe the darker side of it, if you will?
Do you mean in my own process of meditation or in the teaching side of it?
Maybe both.
Okay. So the difficulty that a lot of people have, and that I definitely had in the beginning, is just fitting meditation into a normal busy schedule. I mean, that's probably the big first obstacle that people run into, because a lot of people have got kids, they've got businesses or jobs to deal with. And so, a lot of people have a exercise routine that is, non-negotiable. So how are they going to find this extra time to meditate? So I try and make that easy by saying, okay, we're going to commit to 20 minutes twice a day. I know it's quite a big chunk of the day, but if you can do that, that'll be enough to bring a life-changing amount of benefits. And it won't take that long either. So if you just give it a try, if it doesn't work, then give it up. I'm that confident.
Nice.
And so most people will say, okay, well, I'll do 20 minutes in the morning, after I wake up, but before breakfast. And then I'll find time in the day to do another 20 minutes anytime after lunch. And so most people can find that extra 20 minutes. And if you keep that up, it won't take long. I tell people, give it 3 months, but usually before the 3-month mark, people will realize, oh, okay, there's an ROI here. If I stop doing it, I feel a big difference. I notice a big difference. I'm more reactive. I'm more down. I'm more catastrophizing. The world's going to end, every little thing. I'm also not soaking in the beauty of life around me in the way that I normally would. And I just don't feel as good as I would. And I don't feel connected to people in the same way. And that's when it's like, oh, okay, I no longer am forcing myself to do this thing. I want to do this thing because I want the benefit. And so at the beginning, I will have to say, yeah, push yourself, try and get this time in, make it happen. But over time, people will gravitate towards really wanting to do it because it just makes you feel so much better. Outside of the meditation practice, I can't always guarantee the eyes closed practice will be blissful, but your life outside should start to blossom and bloom if you're taking the time to calm down your mind and body every day.
Wonderful. And I'm not sure, and I'm sure you're very well versed in Buddhism and those type of techniques, because a lot of what I'm hearing from you is like the story of the Buddha himself. It seems like, so quick summation, right? Buddha was raised like Hindu with the caste system, and he kind of didn't really feel that. And I equate that to a lot of your your early party drinking style, right? And then he's like, I'm done. I'm going into the forest, and he goes in there. He learns some things, but he's like, this is not normal life, right? This, like, living away from everything is just ignoring the problem. And he found his problems following him there, right? So then he comes back into normal society, and he says, yes, like, to your happiness model, he says, yes, I can enjoy some of the frivolities of life, right? Some of the material items, but I have to be able to control that. They can't be the main source of my happiness. I have to go forward and develop things like ethics and true relationships, true bonds, and things of that sort for me to open up a lifetime of happiness, right? And I hear that story coming to light in what you just said. And are you a student of Buddhism? Like when you were out in India, was that a big thing for you in the ashrams?
My interest is in how all those different ancient religions and spiritual systems, like Buddhism, how they all point to a similar truth. So, although I'm not a Buddhist, but I know a fair bit about Buddhism and the different
Yeah.
types of Buddhism and what belief systems go into that. But I'm really interested in the human experience. So,
Yes.
what the Buddhists and let's say the Sufis and let's say the Hindus, what they all agree on, that's what I'm most interested in. Like,
Yes. Yes.
so yeah, no, but I like what you were saying about the Buddha though, and I'm fascinated by his story and how it all worked. I'm quite inspired in the way I teach by a Hindu monk who came over from India in the 1960s,
Yeah.
and what he taught was that, funnily enough, because he grew up in the caste system, which not necessarily a good thing depending on how you look at it, but
Yes.
one of the things that taught him was that we don't all have to become monks. If you're a baker or if you're a software engineer or something like that, you should be able to do that and be really good at that. But also, there's no reason why you can't have a meditation practice that complements the life you've already got. And so this is why he taught people 20 minutes twice a day, going deep with a mantra. And
Yes.
so I've using that same technique, that's what I teach people and that's what I tell people. And this is kind of why I say I don't really take credit for most of what I'm doing and what I'm saying, because I'm really just passing on the information that
Yeah.
was brought to the West from the Himalayas by this Hindu monk back in the 60s.
Very, very cool. No, it's such a deep rooted history, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's base understanding, but like I'm not sure, like how you came up through your educational ranks, right? And when I was in middle school, high school, we were taught things like geometry and algebra and those types of things that I don't use at all today, right? And things I could have learned were techniques like the ones you're teaching now, right? And I think everyone should learn those at baseline, maybe even before they get taught arithmetic and things of that sort. Maybe even things like basic financial literacy and things of that sort. But would you agree with that statement? Like, let's say let's run through a scenario. Let's say, Jimmy, you had a kid, right? And you were going to teach them things. Would you enroll them like in that traditional schooling platform? Would you teach them some of the meditation techniques early on? Would you hybrid that? Like, how does that look for you?
Well, it's a good question. I'm not sure exactly how it would play out, but
Yeah.
the way I view it is that everything comes to you through the filter of the mind. So if
Hmm.
your mind is distracted and agitated and not peaceful, your whole world will be that way. You can't find peace out in the world if you don't have peace in your mind. So you'd have to find early on a way of working with the mind in to make sure that you can find peace everywhere else. So if I had kids, which one day, hopefully, let's see,
Yeah.
we will yeah, it would be really important to me to try and teach them how to find some way of working with their own mind that could bring them some kind of peace and happiness. Although at the same time, I wouldn't want to force it on them because I was brought up religious and
Yes.
I rejected that very early on. And it took me a while to come around to the idea that there is some value in spirituality and in spiritual systems. It's just I'm not interested in the dogma.
Yes, no, I agree 100%. And I love that you mentioned that. I myself was raised Hindu, I mean, very, very traditionally Hindu. And when I when we were chatting before this, as you question dogma, it's not like if I question your meditation practice in a polite way, like you should be able to dive into that with me and answer my questions, right? And if you meet that with resistance, then I'm like, there might be a deeper flaw there than that's at hand, right? And so, as I grew up, I realized that spirituality can really mean what you want it to mean. But like when we talk about like a definition of spirituality for me, like I don't know what religion I identify with, but it's more about feelings, right? It's more about am I feeling happy? Am I feeling content? Do I feel like I need to consume more? Do I feel like I need to isolate myself? And that's spirituality for me as of late has been something that I can't really put my thumb on. I can't define it. It's just like an overall feeling. So without going too deep into my perspective here, how is your spiritual journey kind of like shaped over time?
Okay. So as I said at the beginning, I was really against all the spiritual side, and I wanted all
Yes.
this, everything to be scientific. And then my position on that started to soften as time went on. And I started to learn more about the culture from where this kind of meditation that I'm teaching comes from. And then I learned about the culture of other types of meditation. And then I generally just started to get more interested in also the whole background of the spiritual systems. I got really fascinated by how in Eastern spiritual practices, it was all about doing the experiment yourself. Because I was brought up in the West, we were told we were supposed to have faith and believe and don't
Yes.
question. In the Eastern spiritual practices, as far as I could tell, it was like, well, look, the goal is truth. Here's the practices to find it. Go off and do your best. And if you need help, you can have a guru. Now, of course, there's all kinds of people who ruin that for everybody by not being good people.
Right.
But you know, in a perfect world, that's how it worked. You go off and you figure it out using the practices that are handed down. And I really, really like that idea. So although for me, it all started out with trying to fix the problems in my mind, once that was all solved, then I got really fascinated by, okay, what insights can I actually have? What can I learn about the nature of my own consciousness and the nature of the world around me, and how my consciousness and the consciousness of other people and the outside world, how that all connects together, how that interacts. And that also leads you into a rabbit hole of looking at the kind of science around consciousness and what we do and what we don't know. And well, that was a huge revelation for me, because I always assumed consciousness just comes from the brain and that's just the way it is. And I could go and look up in a book and read somewhere consciousness, how it all comes about. Of course, when I went to look it up, I realized it's this huge mystery. Nobody understands it. Nobody has a clue where
Yeah.
it's coming from. You can't point to in any area of the brain and say, this bit secretes the consciousness. And then I realized, wow, okay, so there are scientific theories about consciousness, about the fact it doesn't exist in the brain. And that lines up perfectly with what these ancient yogis were talking about in India thousands of years ago. And strangely enough, in other parts of the world, in Tibet and in China, and even Sufis, they talked about things which kind of line up with this too.
Right.
And so suddenly the philosophical side of it really came to life, because I just thought, well, whoa, hang on a minute. My whole life, I just thought I was a little separate self in this bag of skin. And
Yes.
now I'm starting to realize there's a part of me that may be much bigger than all of that. And so that is a part of the journey that's ongoing, and I imagine is will always be ongoing, because it's the part of us which is the most mysterious. And meditation is a way of getting close to and even living in that mystery consciously every day.
Totally, totally. And you have such great analogies, man. These are really, really good things. And one thing I'm taking away from that is like, so you started your journey with the way I think any human being would, myself included, is you need to know, right? Scientifically, I need to know the answer. Otherwise, I'm not going to do this. And that's a lot of us, right? And I'm not going to downplay that. I'm not going to downplay the importance of it. But, as I've gone along this journey, I've been okay with being on the journey itself and not like so focused on like enlightenment at the end of it or whatever it is, financial, whatever it might be at the end of it. It's like, just be here now. And if you have the right pillars in place, you will most likely find it. But I believe the Buddha said one quote that was great. He's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just on the way. And to me, that was like really, really gold. And when I see your content, I think the same thing. Like, hey, this guy is way ahead in the journey and his meditation phase than I am, but he's still working, right? He still has the young energy to continue to hustle. And even like as soon as you think you have reached a point in your mind where you've gotten there, you are humbled and you realize there's still light years to go. right? And what I would love to hear more about, which would keep me very energetic, is how do you keep what I call that young boy energy? How do you keep that hunger, that drive, that motivation going?
It's funny. It's funny that you describe it in those terms, because for me, what it feels like is um, I'm just finding out interesting things and then I'm sharing them. And I'm really fascinated to know how other people will respond
Yeah.
to the ideas that I'm really interested in, I find fascinating. And so I'm quite lucky in a sense that I have a job and a lifestyle that doesn't need a lot of motivation or a lot of push, because
Nice.
I'm I wake up in the morning and I'm like, the ideas are there fully formed. Like, oh, I think I'll write an email about that. I wonder how people will respond to that, whether that will land with people, because a lot of the things I do, whether they're posts or emails, they're just ideas that come up where I'm trying to work something out myself. And then I'll put it out on Instagram or in an email in order to get my thoughts down on the page, so that then I'm much clearer on what I'm thinking myself. That's how it all started, really.
Nice.
So yeah, it's funny. I sometimes get messages from people who say, oh, I could help you with your business and structure it this way and do it this way. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. The goal isn't to create a big sales funnel and make as much money as possible. I'm just having fun and expressing myself and learning and then sharing it. And it's all just coming back around. And I used to make more money when I was in the trading business, but I've never been happier than now, because it's just feedback and community with people who are into the same thing. And then I'm lucky enough that I can also make some money out of it too, because people are willing to spend a bit of money just to get some time with me, really. So
Yeah.
this is why I say I don't really charge to teach the meditation, because it's out there and I didn't create it, but I charge for my time and the way I explain it.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing, man. No, this is like pretty much like exactly what I was hoping to hear from this conversation. It's been so beneficial for me. And look, what I will say is, the things that you do, they, how do I put it? I do care about your content, right? I do take things from it. I do learn things from it. But let's say at the very surface level, I say, okay, I see someone like Jimmy who it might be in the same realm as I am, not necessarily, but in that ballpark, that big ballpark. And every day you're doing something. Every day you're putting out good energy. And at baseline, that's what I'm trying to do too. And like I said, you're largely more successful than I am in your endeavors. And all I can say is that, hey man, like when I see you doing something in the morning or whatever time I check my Instagram, I'm like, okay, Jimmy's working. What am I doing? Not to compete, but what am I doing to emanate that same type of energy that you're emanating in the world? And how can I make my purpose, my North Star more true and like activate it more, So like I said, at baseline, I just appreciate your content, man. And as I dive into it more and practice some of the actual enlightenment things that you're sharing, I'll probably only learn more, man. So I really, really do appreciate your time today. And I just want to be very cognizant of you because I know you're a busy guy and we're approaching the hour mark. So if we were to part ways right now, and what is one thing that you would love to share with somebody who is either at the start, at the middle, or farther along in their journey? What would you say to them in a phrase or a quick brief passage?
One of the biggest things I've learned in my entire journey is that you don't have to wait for things to be a certain way in order to be happy. You can find your happiness even when things aren't so great, even when you're just at the beginning of a journey and you're not sure it's going to work out, or even if you're coming to the end of a particular journey that you thought was going to be the big thing and it's not. Things are going to be shifting and changing your entire life, and you can find small little pockets of happiness every day or most days, most of the time, if you're just willing to learn how to settle down and calm down the mind and calm down the body and just take a bit of a dive inwards, because happiness and peace is literally what you are. It's interwoven into the fabric of your own being. And so if you do want to find that peace, I promise you, you don't have to go to an ashram or go and live like a monk or a nun. Anybody can do this. You don't even have to pay for a course. that kind of might be a quicker way to get there, but it really is a part of what you are. And if you're willing to just do the experiment and try it out, you can find peace. I promise you, it's absolutely true.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is gold. And as you might say, Jimmy, everyone should delve deep. Um, and then I'll go ahead, and what I'll do is I'll tighten this up, and I will, I'll share it across my platforms. But to anyone who is listening, I highly recommend you go ahead and follow Jimmy's page, That Meditation Guy. He is putting out the best energy that I have seen on Instagram to date. So I hope you guys go and follow him, and I'll be sharing your content more and more. But other than that, I really do appreciate your time. And if you don't mind staying on for a few minutes afterward, I'll go ahead and stop our recording now.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Cheers for having me.